Welcome to Matcha Minutes, where we talk about what's going on in our community. Today, our special guest is Jennifer Christensen, the executive director of the Leavenworth Interfaith Community of Hope homeless shelter in Leavenworth, Kansas. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Um, you have only recently taken this position, is that right?
Yeah, just under a year.
So just under a year.
Mm-hmm.
Got a lot of large footsteps to follow.
Yes.
And it's beginning with Sister Vicky Perkins,
Mm-hmm.
and then Miranda,
Mhm.
and now you. And
Yep.
everybody that talked to in the community says great things about you. So I think we're in good hands. Tell us a little bit about you for people who may not know who you are.
So I've lived a little bit all over the place.
Okay.
I was born in Pennsylvania, lived in North Carolina for 6 years, came out here, graduated from Lawrence High, lived in Lawrence
Okay.
up until I graduated, went and got an associate's degree in Colorado. In criminal justice, got married. I have 4 kids,
Okay.
a daughter that's 10 and 3 teenage sons. So I pretty much just
Wow.
buy food
That's
all
a
the
full
time.
house. Now, for those of you people who don't know, we were talking about barbecue before the podcast started.
Yes.
And there's a huge debate as to whether Carolina barbecue qualifies for barbecue in the Midwest.
If you're from Kansas City, no, it does not. No.
The first
Two
time
very different things, both delicious in their own right.
First time you have to be prepared for Carolina
Yes.
barbecue or even for Southern barbecue.
Yes. No,
that
somebody just
mustardy-
needs to, if you're from Kansas City, someone needs to tell you, like, this is not Kansas City barbecue. Like, no barbecue sauce.
Okay.
This is like just delicious meat.
I just wanted to intro this because I thought it was we start the great debate of what qualifies as barbecue in Leavenworth.
Yeah.
But getting back to our topic.
Yeah. But yeah, sorry. So I have my 4 kids my boys are 13, 14, 16. We live in Baser.
Okay.
Yep. Got 2 dogs, and that's about all I have time for outside of
Wow.
work.
And you probably spend a lot of time at the shelter.
Yeah.
I mean, you work overnight shifts too?
I used to. So I was night shelter director, but I just helped with intake over the weekend and things. So try to pop in where I'm needed, and and I like to have an idea of how every aspect of things are running.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't ever want to get to the part where I'm too removed from any specific thing that we're doing. I would never ask another staff member or volunteer to do something that I'm not willing to do myself.
Sure.
So, yeah. So, but then we do community events, and I, do community engagement things and whatever. So there's all different hours, I have my office hours, but then it's like, okay, there's events on the weekend or in the evenings or whatever. So
there's a lot to unpack there, but I want to take a step back before you became director. You were night shelter director. How long did you volunteer at the shelter before you became the director?
So I started as a volunteer in the fall of 2020.
Okay.
And I came on staff as an admin assistant in the fall of 2022. So for about 2 years, I volunteered. I knew Miranda through church, and she asked me if I wanted to come on as an admin assistant. She just said, she thought that they could use somebody. I'd been a stay-at-home mom for years. She knew I was talking about getting back into work. I'm like, hey, sure. I like volunteering there. And so I came on there, and about a year into it, the night shelter director position opened up, and she's like, hey, think you'd be a good fit for this. It worked out well. I was going through a divorce at the time, and so it was, better pay, whatever. And so I took that on. I did that for 2 years, and then, very shockingly, she's like, hey, my position's going to open up if you're interested. So did not see myself, navigating to this point that quickly, but I'm excited for it, and I enjoy it. So
it's interesting, the work that we do in the community. And I had a conversation with someone who said, well, if we didn't have the homeless shelter, then we wouldn't have homeless people in Leavenworth. And that can't be farther from the truth, but you probably hear things like that all the time.
Yeah.
How do you address that?
I always encourage open conversations. There's this funny, I don't know where it comes from. I'm sure you've probably heard this, but there's this common story, this misconception that there's like a bus that brings people from other places and drops them off in Leavenworth, that like all these homeless are coming to Leavenworth because we have a shelter. And I have no idea where that story originated. It is not true.
I have heard that.
Yeah. I don't know where that comes from. I keep telling people, please put me on the welcoming committee or something, because I want to know where this bus is. But I think there's a misconception that having a shelter draws that, instead of really, it's like, well, it's just raising awareness for the fact that these people exist, and they're not just on the streets or in encampments or things like that. So we're very specific about serving Leavenworth County, and I have the statistics and stuff to back this. So those are my things. I always tell people I try hard to lead with honesty and transparency. So anytime somebody wants to come see how things are run or ask me questions, feel free. So that's where I just try to have open, honest conversations. That's why I say, ask me whatever you want. I'm not afraid to answer any question anybody has, or help them understand something that maybe they were previously uninformed about or misinformed.
Where does most of our homeless population come from, in Leavenworth specifically?
So honestly, I think a large amount of it is severely mentally ill, is definitely the chronic population. The chronic population that you see is, sadly, severe mental illness and just not good resources for dealing with that population. Then that kind of combines with addiction community, because your addiction is very much linked to, addiction is also classified as a mental health disorder. And so a lot of times those are coexisting. So between those two communities, those are a lot of times the people that we're serving. And I think it's a mix of affordable housing being very difficult, but then if you're someone who's struggled with mental health and or addiction, then you've maybe over time kind of slowly burnt some bridges of resources that you had, to the point where you're kind of here, running out of options of anywhere else to go. So
for somebody who first comes to the shelter, what is that experience like for them?
So when they first come to the shelter, now it depends on if they show up at night or during the day.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
Well, when can I show up? I'm homeless. When can I show up at the shelter?
So 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. the day center's open.
Okay.
So somebody could show up and say, hey, I need help, and they can kind of work to connect them with us. Now, our administrative team is in the office 9 to 3 Monday through Thursday. So if we're in the office, we can do an intake, things like that. However, we do, for night shelter, they do intake from 9 to 10 p.m. every single night of the week, and anybody can come and request a bed, and they will be allowed to stay until they can do an intake with us. So let's say they show up on a Friday night, they'd be approved to stay until Monday morning, when they can come into the office and do an intake. So night shelter, they show up 9 to 10 p.m. That process, without getting too lengthy, they would be given like a big blue bag. They put all of their outer belongings and stuff in it. It goes back behind the counter. We give them a t-shirt, shorts, socks to change into. They put all their personal clothes in another bag that goes behind the counter. So we restrict, a lot of what goes back to their beds, for hygiene, sanitation reasons, but also safety. And so that stuff all stays behind the counter. They get assigned a bed. We have a women's hall and a men's hall. They're not allowed on the other side, but it is one big open area. Most of our rooms, they're kind of 3-walled, and most of them have 2 beds. Some of them have a couple more than that. We can serve up to 35 total. And so they'll be assigned a spot. They're not assigned that same spot. Like some shelters will have like, oh, this is your bed for the duration of time you're here. We don't have, since we're emergency shelter, they just get whatever assigned every night. They have to be up and out of the shelter by 7 a.m. And so then the day center opens from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. They serve breakfast and lunch. And so in the day center, they have access to shower and laundry. They have Wi-Fi access, access to facilities, things like that. Obviously, safety from elements. They have heating and air conditioning and whatever, other resources that they might need. We also have, case management, a lot of partnerships with other places like RADAC or the guidance center and stuff that come in on a weekly basis to meet with them. And so they can stay in there. Obviously, they're free to leave at any time. In the night shelter, if they choose to leave during night shelter, they can't come back in. So it's kind of a once you're in for the night, you're in. Day center, they can come and go. They just ask them to come on the top or the bottom of the hour so that somebody's not opening the door every 2 minutes.
Sure.
But yeah, and then night shelter, they hand out a sandwich and stuff so that if somebody's with us, then they should at least have those 3 meals through us.
You said they get an intake done, and they can stay with you until that intake is done.
Yeah.
What does that intake consist of?
So there is like a quick intake that night shelter will do, and it's kind of a little half page that has just basic information, release of information, stuff like that. Some of what we need. It's kind of boring paperwork that we need for some grants that we get, just proving, that kind of silly, but like proof of, verification that they say that they're homeless and stuff like that. The more thorough
They have to provide verification that they're homeless?
No, it's kind of them verbally, or not verbally, but a written consent, whatever, saying, hey, I'm claiming that I am, homeless. And yeah, just things like their name, date of birth, whatever. We don't ask for the night shelter. They don't take any identification or anything. Now, when we do our intake in the office, if they have any personal identifying documents like an ID or birth certificate or whatever, we take copies of that kind of stuff. Our 2 requirements at the shelter are that they are self-sufficient, meaning that we cannot help with people that need help changing clothes or using the restroom or things like that. Like, we just don't have, staff that have the training or the, capabilities to be doing. We only have like 11 staff in our whole facility. So, they would need to be in, more of a assisted living type situation. And then otherwise that they're Leavenworth County. So then a big thing is proving residency, which is hard because you're homeless, right? So I explain that one a lot to people, which is basically when we try to get that documentation, it is pretty much anything that can show that you have a tie to Leavenworth County. So do you have you had a job? Can you show where you've been working somewhere in the county? Do you have a birth certificate or something where it shows that you were born in this county? You have a school transcript? Do you have mail and an address around here where you were previously staying that you got evicted from? Like something like that shows a specific tie to the county that you've been. Sometimes it's word of mouth, another organization or someone going, hey, we've served this person for years. Like we can verify that they've been street homeless for X number of time, whatever. And then we will kind of do that just to get a letter or whatever from that organization stating that information. But then otherwise, it's pretty much just an agreement of going over our rules and stuff like that and making sure that they understand our policies and procedures. And
so if I'm just wandering through and I'm not from Leavenworth County, I can't stay at the shelter.
So if you show up, they're not going to require the proof of residency to stay for a night.
Okay.
Our thing is we don't like to send people out the door with no help whatsoever. Like, hey, you're not from here. Good luck to you.
Sure.
A prime example, like I said, there was somebody that showed up this morning. He came last night to the shelter, needed a place to stay. They got him a bed. He's needing to get back to Nebraska. So we bought him a bus ticket this morning and sending him back there because that's where he has resources. That's where he has, I think he has probation or something, like just, things that it's like, if we can get somebody back to a place that they have services, we do have some funding to help with that. So that's typically speaking, if someone shows up, then we're going to do our best to try to get them back somewhere that they can receive services.
I've been told in the past that our legal system in Leavenworth County is part of our homeless problem, meaning that I get a DUI in Leavenworth County and I'm not from here. I'm just passing through. Now I'm on probation in Leavenworth County. I've got no family here. And so now all of a sudden I'm thrust into this homeless life because I can't leave or I risk going back to jail. Why is that? That seems like it's such an easy solve.
Yeah, I wish I knew the solution. It is. I mean, I have met many individuals that are stuck in that situation that would have far more resources or whatever where they're from. They have family, they have whatever other connections, but without them being willing to transfer their probation, parole, whatever, they're stuck here. And so, yeah, it is a very backwards, you commit a crime here, you have to do your probation here, you're stuck here for years. Then we're kind of stuck trying to, so we worked a lot with a lot of the probation and parole officers saying like, hey, we're really, we made in the past made a few exceptions for some of those individuals. Cause it's like, well, I mean, you are going to be stuck in Leavenworth County for a while. But made it very clear that that was not going to be something that could be a long-term solution for us. And so, I think now they're finding hard to find them kind of other resources, but it is something that, I think they need to reassess and, consider transferring them to where they're from or some, because that's, it's for sure a problem and contributing to some of the homeless population here.
Most people will suggest, and I'm asking you if this is true or not, that if we have a high homeless population, then we likely have a high population of crime in that area. Is that true?
So I'd say no.
Okay.
I mean, I can't statistically, but I don't have any of those, nor have I really looked a ton into that. I can only tell you. So a difficult thing is a lot of the homeless community have records, right? And a lot of them, some absolutely have felonies and things like that. And they are hard to house. So it's not shocking that they would be homeless, right? Because felons, especially sex offenders, people like that, are very difficult to house. It's difficult to find them jobs, all of that. So for sure that contributes to homeless population. And those can be people that, maybe be a little bit more dangerous. But there's also a lot of the homeless population who get picked up for really silly, like trespassing, where it's like, really, they're just trying to find, I don't believe that they're dangerous individuals. I can understand someone being afraid if they're like, why is this guy in my shed? I mean, I would be worried about that too.
Sure.
But as someone working with these people, like they're not dangerous, they're just people that are trying to find some resource to keep themselves safe. And so, yes, a lot of times they'll, pick up charges for trespassing or things like that, or stealing something or whatever, just kind of petty little things here and there. Overall, I would be curious. I think a lot of low-income areas struggle with crime rates. I would be curious to compare that to like low-income areas with high homelessness or not, and see if there's really any difference crime-wise. I think that it's that's the area that the shelter is in, because that's where, a lot of the homeless individuals are. I don't necessarily think there's a direct correlation to crime. While I have encountered some violent offenders and things, I mean, I have friends who used to be like, oh, I couldn't work there. I wouldn't want to be there. It's dangerous. And I'm like, I've never really felt that way. But I understand that that's how some people might see it.
People's first attempt at managing something like that, they see somebody out there, they see a homeless person, is to call law enforcement. It's not a crime to be homeless, but we expect law enforcement to manage that. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I think the sad thing, I've encountered a lot of people that have this, it's sad, but there's definitely people with a mentality that are just kind of like, just get them all out of here. Like, just,
bust
out of
them
sight.
somewhere else.
Yes. I mean, honest to God, I've heard people are just like, put them all on a bus and get them out of here. Like, where's that bus going? What are we doing with them? Must be the bus that shows up and brings them to us.
These are people we're talking about.
Yeah. And so that's the thing, is that it's the fact that it's like, okay, let's look at, we lovingly kind of call this like homeless whack-a-mole, which sounds horrible, but the humorous but realistic aspect of, if you tell them, no, you can't be here, no, you can't be here, no, they're just going to keep popping up somewhere until you say you can't be here, but you can be here.
Yeah.
So that's why at the shelter, we at least give them a place that they can be, right? But beyond that, trying to solve that problem longer term, so you don't have all those individuals that are just stuck out there with nowhere to go. So how do we move people through that process faster, so we don't have so many individuals just stuck without somewhere to go? And we do have good relationships with the law enforcement stuff. In fact, I just got a text from an officer this morning asking me about a particular individual, and I was like, yep, I can take him back if he's willing to, or if he's open to that. So we try to work together to keep them from, just picking up more charges and ending back in that cycle that doesn't really help solve the problem.
It seems like we just don't want to see them. And so, out of sight, out of mind, but we do have a large homeless encampment in town. Several of them that people just don't see them at. And so they assume that the people aren't living there. But I think if you were to go back there, you would see small tent cities. How do we solve the problem? I think PD has taken the first step, because they ride with a social worker now to calls like that. And I think if you look statistically, you can see the number of suicide calls have gone down. The number of people going to jail for these things has gone down. So that's contributing to helping the problem. But how do we solve it?
Yeah. Co-responders are fantastic, because co-responders, for anybody that doesn't know this, are a social worker that is not a police officer. They respond with police. So we have Andrea Kessler here. She responds with them, and then she works for the guidance center. And so her goal is to come on those calls with someone, particularly in a mental health crisis or things like that, where she can specifically advocate on their behalf for, what best, services, what can serve them best in that moment. Is that, getting them to guiding lights? Is that taking them to the hospital? Is that what's, responding on that aspect, instead of, like you said, just having law enforcement show up where they're like, okay, well, I can take you here. And sometimes just having someone that is not an officer that can show up and be like, hey, I'm just here for you. I'm not going to arrest you. I'm not whatever. I'm just here to help you. Changes things. Now, what I would say about the longer term solution is, so shelter's a great thing to have. However, without the proper steps in place to kind of funnel people, I'm like herding cattle, basically. I mean, that's what it feels like. If I don't have anywhere to send them, I'm just bringing people in, and I'm spinning my wheels, but I'm not getting anywhere. So to me, the long-term solution is things like affordable housing, it's treatment centers, it's transitional housing, it's doing the things, it's providing the services that these individuals need to be successful long-term. So some of the gaps that I see, some of the things that I think are we're a low barrier shelter, which is very much needed, which means that we don't require sobriety. We don't allow drugs or alcohol on property, but we don't require them to be sober. We don't drug test. We have felons, we have sex offenders. Like I said, you gotta be self-sufficient. You gotta be Leavenworth County. But it would be great to have a medium barrier shelter that they do some of those things. So then you have those people who do really want to work in a program and they want to stay sober. They're working on those things, that you can kind of separate those two instead of trying to have them existing in the same facility. That makes it really difficult. So I visited Topeka Rescue Mission, some of the other ones that run medium barrier shelters, and they have a lot more freedoms and things to do with those clients, because they they can drug test, they can do a lot more, but they can also allow those people a little bit more freedoms and stuff and kind of teach them what that process looks like. Our director of operations, Claire, that I hired on my team, she helped start the first women's Oxford house in Leavenworth. They opened a men's house in Lansing, working on another men's house in Leavenworth. That's been huge for us because that's sober living. So giving these people a place that they can stay and continue to work on their sobriety. Affordable housing is obviously huge for everyone. I think we're all, seeing and understanding that the cost of living is continually rising.
Is affordable housing the same as Section 8 housing? And is it just a different term to reduce the stigma? And I only ask that because somebody asked me that same question outside of a commission meeting. And I realized, I don't know if I really know that answer.
I mean, I would say same. I don't know that I've ever thought about it. When I say that term, I just mean something that they can afford, I don't know. I don't know if everybody thinks of it that way. It could be for sure, more of that. But I also think just in general, you look at rent. A lot of people I know pay as much or more for rent as I do my mortgage.
Yeah.
And so just finding somewhere that they're literally able to afford on their own. We partner with Leavenworth Attainable Housing, some of those. And sometimes the best thing to do is get, a house that 2 or 3 of them can share and be roommates so that makes, things more affordable. But in general, it's just hard. Depending on their situation. And then like we talked about that severe mentally ill, a big problem that I've seen is you think back to when we there was this uproar about institutionalizing people and how they were being treated and all that kind of stuff. And we get to shut down all those facilities. And the downside was we didn't think about like what happens again, that when you get rid of this, where does that go? If you take them away from here, then where do they go? And a lot of those people ended up homeless. So then you have these severely mentally ill people who end up with frostbite. They were losing fingers, toes, hand, feet, whatever, because they're on the streets and they're not good at taking care of themselves, advocating for themselves, things like that. They're also incredibly difficult to house because they can't really they don't do well on their own. A lot of them, if they have severe mental illness, they don't do well inside. There's a common misconception that a lot of the people that wander around downtown and stuff are all homeless. And a lot of them are there's several that I know that people have referred to that are housed. They are just severely mentally ill. I know exactly who some of them are because they were formerly homeless. And just, that specific population, getting them the help that they need or having more, you have like Marion apartments and different ones that are for people with severe and persistent mental illness, but we don't have enough of those. You got Riverside, it's got years waiting list to get somebody in a group home or something like that. So then I have, a handful of individuals that are chronically homeless that I can't, in good conscience be like, well, you've been here for a while. Sorry, time to go.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just the wait to get them anywhere is huge. So
without naming names, can you share a story of where you saw a real success in what you do at the shelter?
One of my favorite stories, and I still meet with this individual, not as regularly as I would like to or as I used to, just, busy. But I met her years ago, probably when I was still an administrative assistant. She was staying at the shelter. And I remember being with her. She was just having a hard time, and she had an incredible past. She would show me pictures of her with celebrities. She had a life as a traveling nurse.
Wow.
She had a very amazing life. And I remember sitting out in the dirt in the backyard with her once, and she was just very suicidal, I just, so basically I saw her at that rock bottom, just laying out in the dirt, the pillow, didn't want to get up, didn't want to do anything. I don't care, I'll just go jump off the bridge. Whatever, I've had it, blah, blah, blah. And I remember seeing her at her lowest and just, continuing to work with her and encourage her and all those things. So fast forward, she has been housed for a couple years now.
Wow.
And successful. And so her and I will, occasionally have lunch or run some errands or do things. I'll bring her a meal at, Thanksgiving or stuff like that. And so it's people like her, like I always tell her or tell other people, those are the things that keep me showing up every day, to have seen someone at their lowest point, where they're really struggling, they don't even want to live. And then to be able to see somebody, that same person make it to, the other part where they're housed successfully and they're happy and they're doing well. Unfortunately, those aren't as common as I would like, but they, those are what keeps me going.
How do you balance accountability with compassion?
So it is difficult. We are learning.
I can only imagine. It's not easy.
It's hard because, especially, I think, I've talked with my staff a lot about those things, because we are such compassionate people. Mm-hmm. We want to help. It's also easy when you're like that to find yourself in a position where you can be taken advantage of, so we have a lot of conversations about boundaries and what does this look like and what's the line between, helping and enabling. So we try to put things in place. Like we have, I hate to say we have a 90-day contract, so that sounds very misleading. We have kind of contracts or agreements, and basically, instead of getting hung up on the amount of time, it's more or less that it's in their hands, right? Whether to take some of these next steps, and what those next steps are different from everybody, because everybody's capabilities and things are different. But it's kind of, what are you doing for yourself? I can't work harder on this than you are. So if someone comes in and they're working hard and to no fault of their own, they're not, haven't made progress yet. Hey, that's okay. You're still showing up. You're still working. We're going to keep doing this. But if someone shows up and they're just kind of like, I'm going to sit here for 30 days, 60 days, whatever, for free, I'm going to whatever, then yeah, we will hit a point that we go, okay, unfortunately, your time's up here, let us know if you, and so then maybe we put some stipulation as to, if you get a job or you complete this step, you come back and let us know, and maybe we can reconsider, letting you have another stay here. But trying to keep those boundaries where we hold them accountable for their side of things, so that we are still helping, but we're not enabling.
What do you wish local leaders and policymakers better understood about the issue?
I think I wish in general that people would be a little bit more open-minded about understanding the homeless community, come check out the shelter, or come, get to meet some of these people. I think it's easy to have the mindset of you want them to be, out of sight or whatever. It's harder to do that once like for me, I say these people are like an extension of my family. I see them every day. I see them all over town. I wave at them. I think it's harder once you get to know some of these people and some of their stories and stuff like that to dismiss it so easily. Mm-hmm. And so, and at a political level, I wish people understood that a lot of this is solvable. It just takes the right people working together to accomplish the right things, to give people the resources they need to get out of this. Are we going to be able to solve that for everybody? Probably not, but there are a lot of them that if we had the right resources, we could, put a huge dent in, solving that problem for a lot of those people.
As the executive director, what are your biggest priorities for the future?
Well, now that I'm like almost a year through just understanding how to do everything.
Has it taken almost a year to understand it?
Honestly, it's kind of one of those, every different parts of the year have, different things like, getting through the gala in and of itself was a big thing there. I had, so some people don't know this, but I had 0 grant writing or management experience. That was the biggest hold up in hiring me was I had all the experience at the Community of Hope, knowledge of the guest and all of that stuff, but I had no experience with managing or applying for grants or anything. So that's a huge part of like first part of the month and stuff, applying for all these grants and doing things. And so there was just a lot of that kind of stuff as we'd move through each part of the year that I'm like, okay, well, I've never done this before. Now I have to figure that out. So now this next year for me is kind of like, okay, now I've survived this. Now I can kind of look and see, what things I want to add or things I want to change. We are working on adding a community garden to we have a empty lot on Kickapoo. So we're working on adding a community garden back there. And my goal, honestly, short term is just really working on those partnerships, increasing awareness of who we are, doing, building updates. Like I want to repaint simple things like repainting our building, replacing our front doors, some of those things. Our building's 8 years old now. Mm-hmm. Big picture, I want us to be a part of some of the bigger problems. I'd love to be a part of seeing a treatment center come to Leavenworth County. I'd love to be a part of seeing transitional housing or a medium barrier shelter. I know those are things when I say to my board, they're like, another facility? And I'm like, it doesn't necessarily have to be us, but, I want to be a part of solving the long-term problem. And whether that's just partnering with the right people or having the right conversations or whatever, those are things that, as the executive director of the Community of Hope, that I want to be a part of.
For those listening that want to get involved and want to help, what's the best way they can do that?
You can call, you can come in, any of those. Our Facebook page is on there. We are going to have a new website coming in June. And so that'll be a good way to get connected as well. But yeah, calling us, stop by in the shelter anytime. We're always happy to give people tours, show them around, use volunteers during the daytime to help serve lunch and stuff like that. We need lots and lots of volunteers in our night shelter. There's always ways to get connected. So, give us a call, stop in, send us an email. We always love to get people connected with us.
Okay, now we're going to switch gears.
Okay.
And we're going to do rapid fire questions with Jennifer Christensen.
Okay.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Okay. Fancy coffee or black coffee?
Oh, fancy.
Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Oh, night owl. Absolutely.
Favorite comfort food?
Nachos.
Nachos.
I have a thing for nachos. I don't know why.
I don't disagree. Best advice you've ever received?
So when I had my kids, my father-in-law at the time, basically just said, trust you're going to have all these opinions come in and out and just trust what feels right to you as a parent. And I didn't realize at the time how profound that was going to be, but over time, certainly with having 4 kids and social media, everybody's full of opinions, things. I didn't realize how helpful that was going to be to just go, you know what, I'm going to do what feels right to me and what seems right and stick with that.
One word that describes Leavenworth.
Unique.
Okay, I like it. Favorite place to grab lunch?
In Leavenworth?
Mm-hmm. We're not making this one easy. Karma Cakes, good call.
Yeah, okay. I love their chicken salad. My dad was a big chicken salad guy, and love it.
Book, movie, or podcast you would recommend?
Oh, that is tough. So I am not a big reader. I will admit it. But I did just watch a movie. So, like I said, not a big reader, but I've always been just kind of fascinated by people. Surprise, surprise, working in the human service field, right? So if I read, it's usually like a biography, autobiography, or like about a specific. So I've always been, this might sound weird, I've always been kind of intrigued about stuff related to the Holocaust, just a lot of survival stories, different ones like that. So I read like The Tattooist of Auschwitz and some of that series, those really good books. But I just watched a movie that one of our volunteers recommended to me. It's called Life is Beautiful, and it's in Italian. I don't know if there's an English voiceover version, but it's this really neat story about this couple that meets and everything. But it's in the middle of World War II and stuff. And the father and the son get taken to a concentration camp, and it's on his little boy's birthday. His kid is probably 4 or 5 years old, whatever. But he convinces his son that this is all like a like a survival game.
Okay.
To kind of keep the excitement and stuff in his little kid. And so it's just this incredible story of how hard this father tries to make his kid excited and happy and everything in the midst of this concentration camp where this kid thinks that they're really in this, that he's organized this for his birthday. And so, he does these funny things like the German soldier comes in and is asking, if any of them speak German, and he raises his hand and the guy's like, you speak? And he's like, nope. And he stands up and acts like he's translating what the officer says. And he's like, things you'll lose points for, first one to 1,000 points win. The prize is a tank, whatever. And he's like, then the guy's like, so things you lose, the guy's like just doing things like this. And the guy's like, first thing you lose points for, crying for your mommy. Second, whatever, just doing all these things. And his kid is just sitting there with all this excitement and stuff. And, telling him things like, oh, we're in the lead. You gotta hide. There's no other kids around. And the reality and the sadness is these, kids have been taken to the crematories and things like that. And his, in the midst, his son has no idea. So anyway, it was a really touching movie.
Okay. One thing people would be surprised to learn about you.
Well, I didn't realize that several people at the shelter did not know that I have quite a few tattoos.
Okay.
So yeah, I wore a pair of shorts the other day and one of them was like, oh, you have tattoos. I don't know, but,
something from your youth, or are you still going after them?
Oh no, a lot of them are a lot more recent. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, I think I've always liked them. And then the past few years was kind of like, oh, why not? Let's get some of the things that I like. So
best part of working with volunteers?
It's fun to just meet people from different places. I think because of our proximity to Fort Leavenworth, we get a lot of people from the military. And so we meet a lot of different kinds of people. And honestly, the thing for me is like, I've always been a humanitarian at heart. And so what I love is that our volunteers are, typically have those same kind of hearts. They want to be there. They want to help. I tell everybody when I do volunteer training that one of the things we say at the Community of Hope is that we're a place of peace, hope, and respect. And so I tell them when I do volunteer training, I'm like, I'm sorry if this offends anybody, but if you come in here and you think you're any better than anybody in here, respectfully, this is not the place for you to volunteer.
Oh, nice.
And so I love that. Yeah. Our volunteers mostly are just excited to, meet people and serve people and make those connections and make people feel, one of the big things that I always try to tell people when I talk about the shelter and stuff is my most shocking thing when I first started was how often I heard people say, thank you for treating me like I'm human.
Oh, wow.
And I just was the first time I ever heard that, I just I was taken back because I was just like, what? Why would you be treated like anything else? Like that would never occur to me to not treat someone like that. So I love working with people that have that same mindset that they're no different than you or I or whatever, and they deserve that same kindness and respect.
When people leave this, or when people see this conversation, what is one thing you hope that they'll take away from it?
I hope that they will, come away maybe with a different mindset, or at least the idea to be open to a different mindset, to be open to conversations, to be open to, not just having that idea of wanting to shun people away or to believe rumors. I mean, I tell people all the time, if you've heard something that bothers you, something that you think is untrue or whatever, something that you think might be horribly true about the shelter or about homeless people or whatever, ask us. I like to have those conversations and things. And so that's really what I would hope comes from things like this is just, the ability for me to be transparent and to hope that other people will be willing to have conversations and spread just awareness for what the true, homeless community is like.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
This has been incredible. We've learned a lot about the work you do, the important work you do. Thank you to you and your staff for the amazing things they do for our community. If anybody out there wants to volunteer or get involved, please look Jennifer up on their website, their Facebook page, stop in and see them. They're always happy to tour. I know we took a tour last year, and it's just amazing the number of people that you serve and work with. And so thank you very much for doing that. I don't know if people realize how homelessness is such a big city issue for us, and you guys are doing something to try to help resolve that. And that's more than a lot of people. And so when we created this podcast, after I ran for county commission and lost, we did this in hopes that we could let people know what services our community provides. And we provide a lot of, we have the biggest heart of any community I've ever run into, of things that we want to do for people. And we just do, I don't know if we do a poor job, or we don't do a very good job of advertising all the services out there. And so we hope by doing this that people will see, just everything that's out there, and different ways they can get involved and contribute to our community.
Yeah.
If you like this content, please subscribe and like so that we can continue bringing it to you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.